Well, it may take more than a few decades to wean Maine's homes and businesses from heating with fossil fuels, but where our electricity comes from, that is likely to be a very different story.
As of right now, according to the governor's energy office, 60% of the power we use comes from renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydro. Governor Mills wants to see us hit 80% renewables by 2030 and 100% by 2050. Whether we reach those goals is dependent in large part on something we can't control, the stability of electric grids outside of our borders.
After all, we can't generate all the power we need. It'll have to come from somewhere else. In our ongoing series on Maine's changing climate tonight, Keith Carson shows us how, at least for now, that power would have a hard time getting here from there.
According to the Energy Information Administration, the United States is projected to get 44% of its electricity from renewable sources by the year 2050. One of the main challenges of increasing the role of renewables in our electricity generation is the lack of a national grid. Let me explain. Currently, the nation is split into three regions: the Western Interconnection, the Eastern Interconnection, and ERCOT, which is basically just Texas. While there's some small connections between these separate grids, they're not synced on a wide scale or high voltage. When it comes to renewable energy, this lack of interconnectivity can be a major issue. Due to the nature of solar, wind, and hydro, the area producing the most power is not necessarily the area with the highest energy demand. In fact, it's often the opposite. A cold, cloudy, almost windless day in the Northeast will require more energy for light and heating, but won't produce much generation. Meanwhile, a bright, breezy day in Northern California will likely have low energy demand while producing excess generation. These supply and demand imbalances aren't just weather specific either. A report from the Wind Energy Association found that 15 states between the Rockies and the Mississippi account for 87% of the U.S. total wind energy potential and 56% of the solar potential, but only account for a projected 30% of the national energy demand by 2050. An interconnected grid would solve for this issue and allow renewable energy to be generated in one part of the country and delivered to major population centers and areas experiencing extreme demand. So what's the holdup? Well, in order to connect the grid efficiently, there would need to be a huge increase in high voltage transmission lines. There are a lot of challenges to building these lines, including a complicated regulation and permitting process, right-of-way issues, local opposition, and the question of who would pay for the project. Ultimately, many utility companies have no incentive to be interconnected, as it may interrupt their natural monopoly of their service area. As it stands, without this national grid, when renewable energy production exceeds the demand, utility companies curtail production to avoid essentially wasting or losing the renewable kilowatts. And most would agree that's the last thing we want to do in our march towards cleaner, reliable energy. Keith Carson, News Center, Maine.